Now moving on to part 4 of this series, today we're going to review 2 albums of Duran Gray as we get more into the darker and serious tones of the band. There are some listeners of this band that only like this era, and this was a turning point for me because after Uroboros, I dropped off of Duran Gray completely for a very long time. Uroboros is their 7th studio album and 3rd global release, so Duran Gray is big business, and so now our personnel is much bigger. Yoshinori Abe and Dynamite Tommy are back. This time Abe is a programmer, and we have Yasushi Konishi mixing and recording. Something interesting is that the Duran Gray members themselves are credited for playing multiple instruments for this album. Koru, Dai, and Toshiya are credited as backup singers, and Koro is taken on the electric sitar on this one, and Dai is taking up the mandolin. Toshiya is on the biwa, it's like this really old instrument, and Shinya is taking on conga drums as well as other percussion instruments. So Duran Gray is bringing a lot to the table here themselves. Let's see how Uroboros fares. Okay, so first up we have Sabir. I don't know exactly how to pronounce that. And it's something we haven't had in a while. It's an intro track or an intermission track. This is something that sets the mood. It's very dark and serious, and you can hear a lot of the ethnic, non-Western instruments at play. Now, I'm not too familiar with the biwa or electric sitar sounds, but it sounds like a lot of those are happening here. It's definitely a mood setter and nothing too crazy is happening. I think it sets up the next song really well, and honestly I wouldn't mind if it was attached to the very next song. But just on its own, I can see people skipping this one. But overall, I think it does its job. I give it a C+. Alright, now we have this song. This right here, in my opinion, is Duran Gray's best song. While Duran Gray composes well overall, they'll have these moments where the composition is at a whole other level. Think songs like Cage, think songs like their ballad on Withering to Death, where everything is just very intricate. And this is that level of composition over 9 minutes long. Couple that level of composition with some of the best lyrics Kyo has ever made, and you get something truly magical. I actually already made an entire video about the lyrics and atmosphere of this song a long time ago. Shinya really kicks butt on this song, as you'll get a blasting blast beat and then the soft atmospheric tom groove, and something he would do on a ballad. So there's all that happening here. There's also this cool sounding flute part that takes over the melody, and it's just bittersweet. Vocally, it's probably my favorite, as Kyo's range and tones is like really crazy in this one. Lots of different tones. And I can't even scratch the surface of the detail that this song has. In fact, I'd have to make probably a video series to get to the exact bottom of this one to explain everything. So if you're an old school Duran Gray fan who dismissed their later work, at least listen to this one, because I think it is their best one. Overall, I give it the gold very easily. Alright, now we have Red Soil. It's hard to follow the last song, but I think Red Soil does a good job in doing so. It's quite unique, and you'll get this catchy guitar riff similar in style to Marley Chainsaw. So there's still elements of their old melody style, even with these darker, serious songs. The drum groove is quite intricate and almost feels like it's pulsating, which is kind of rare for drum parts. Usually, drum parts just keep the groove, but this one's a little different. This actually forces all of the other instruments to act the same way, so all the instruments have to kind of follow this pulsating groove. I am afraid of diving into these lyrics. These lyrics look really weird. Some of them are actually in English and are written really well in English. A lot of times when Japanese artists write English, you can kind of tell, but this one is it's pretty good. There's also a use of harpsichord sounding samples in here, which is quite unexpected, but it actually fits the overall lyrics of the song, which I find to be really cool. This one is strong enough to be an opener, and I bet they really debated whether or not to put this one or the last one as track 2. Overall, I give this one an A+. Alright, this is another great song on here as its composition lends itself to be very emotional. It's rough sounding in the beginning, and throughout it cleans up in some instances. It does that on purpose, of course. The song gets really, really loud towards the end, which I find pretty cool. It almost sounds like the song is in this uncontainable glass and will break at any second. It's a really cool effect that Duran Gray manages to do a lot. In these more serious songs, kind of like Ryoka Jo no Ami. These lyrics and Red Soils and even Venushka's, they're very impressionistic in a way where it's really hard to tell exactly what they're about, and I'm sure it's done on purpose as well. Overall, I give this one an A+. It's really strong, and this is a really good start for the album. Alright, the first time I heard this one was actually in person, as they played it right in front of me because I was at a live concert. And I remember turning to my older brother, who was with me, and somewhat of a fan of Duran Gray themselves, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was, after hearing the song, was, "Wow, that was better than Heartbeat," which was his favorite song at the time. And though I don't compare it with that song, because Heartbeat was more alternative rock, and this one is very, very different. It actually gives a similar vibe to their other song called The Pledge, but where The Pledge is an easy to listen to song, this one is a very complex, kind of like it's crazy stepbrother or something. If you listen to this song on headphones, you can really hear all of the instruments just kind of doing their own thing. Bass guitar actually comes out really well here, as it does some basic melody. The drum part is also amazing as well, but Kyo's vocals and singing style in this one actually imitate a dancing melody. It moves really strangely, and then he'll roll his R's as well. It's just a really strange and really awesome melody. This one gets the gold for me. There's some really high level things going on. Combine that with the vibe it gives off, and you got a song that's made just for me. Alright, I'm not sure how well this one is received on paper. I should like Glass Skin, and it's one of their radio, quote-unquote radio songs for this album, along with Dawson Green. I remember being really excited for this album and listening to this song and actually being a little underwhelmed. It's easy to listen to, and there's a version of it completely in English for all the English listeners. And all the instruments are pretty sound, they're pretty good, all the parts are well done. I think by itself, it's a pretty good song. Even though English is not Kyo's first language, these lyrics, as they are in English, are actually really, really good. Usually, like I said before, if a Japanese singer writes in English, you can kind of tell because it's kind of broken a little bit. But this one actually is pretty fluid. But overall, I still think it's a good song. It's just not as good as the ones that came before it. The ones that came before it are really, really good. And the radio songs of the last few albums I also enjoyed more than this one as well. Still a pretty good song. I like the piano. I like the overall vibe. I give Glass Skin a B+. Alright, who says jazz is dead in Duran Gray? This song is pretty good and is really heavy. If you just listen to Gauze and then jump to this, then you would think it's an entirely different band. Really good drums, slap bass guitar, and there's even a jazz groove and a slight walking bass-like sound in the middle of the song. Kyo is screaming like a madman in this one, and the soft synthesizer behind his voice is kind of really offsetting and crazy. This is not a song for everyone, but it is really good. If you've been missing the amazing bass work of Toshio from the early days, then I think you'll love this one. It's not a melodic bass line, but it still shines through very well. Though Kyo is screaming his butt off, the lyrics of this one are actually really intricate, and I feel like they allude to a ton of different things that can make me go on a tangent if I, decided to dive in on that. This one is a really good one. I give this one an A+. Alright, so I think so far this is probably my favorite heavy focus song that they've done. There is a lot to it, and something about it is just really grand. And it's perfectly placed on this album, being right after Stuckman. The songs go together very well. And that song, Stuckman, kind of feels like a warm-up to this one. You have this growling vocal that's being played along to these quick acoustic guitar chords and a melodic bass line, then followed up by these crazy atonal guitar riffs. Really excellent. The bridge and the atmospheric part is really interesting as well, as Duran Gray pulls out their traditional instruments, the biwa, mixed with congas, reverb drum set, and this electric guitar riff playing in the background. It's just something you have to hear for yourself. And apparently, just like I mentioned in the personnel, they did not outsource these instruments. Toshiya plays the biwa, and Shinya covers the conga. So conga drums are very different, a lot different technique than drum set, and it sounds like they're being hand played. So he knows his Latin percussion, and he's showcasing it here. This one is a must listen. Lyrics actually are in English, and they're quite simple, but they still mean something. This one gets the gold for me. This one might be an underrated song. Okay, now this one. I will say that this is a great ballad-like song, but not as good as the other ballads from the previous two albums, which is what I'm comparing this one to. And that's the funny thing for Duran Gray. You don't really find yourself comparing this one to the songs before it or other songs on the album because there's just really nothing like it on the same album. This one is pretty atmospheric. Acoustic guitars are playing the 16th patterns, which sets up the lost nature of this song. And if you read the lyrics while you listen, you'll see that it's very fitting. The drum part itself is really good and crazy. In fact, it's some of Shinya's best work in my opinion. The only beef that I have with this song is that it drags on a little too long. And the scream within it kind of comes out of nowhere as the song, I feel, crescendos a little bit too early. Of all their ballads, I come to like this one, I would say probably the least, but I'm comparing this song to two really out of this world ballads. On its own, this one is still pretty good. I give this one a good A-. Alright, let's get ready for Hydra 666 as we're getting some bonus songs that were included on the re-release of this album. So I'm going to go over those in this review right now. Alright, so this is a remake of Hydra from their song on, this was a song on Macabre. Since this song has a slightly different title and is vastly different from its original, I'm going to give this one its own rating, since I kind of consider them like two entirely different songs. If you recall from part 2 of this long journey, I gave the original Hydra a C-, so not one of my favorites by Duran Gray. This version fixes everything I didn't like about the original. Lyrics are way more in depth, the song is more intricate, and the song itself even shifts more. It's like they went back and heard Hydra and were like, yeah, we could do that one better. And they did. It's vastly better. So from a C- to a B+, though it's good compared to Stuckman and Cold Blooded, I still think it falls a little short on the heavy side. But hey, it's a bonus song, and usually bonus songs aren't very good in my experience. So yeah, Hydra 666, I think it's a pretty good one. I give it a B+.
You can speak the truth with a guy, and then you do this.
Alright, this one is another bonus song that we're getting as we're covering the extended songs here. And I have to say, I really don't know about this one. I guess it serves as an intermission for the album, if it were to be on there officially, but the song is on the re-release. This song is basically just Bugaboos, Bugaboos, I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's just the lyrics sung with a quiet voice. There's something else playing in the background, but I can't really tell what it is. Also, if memory serves me right, I remember not being that big of a fan of Bugaboo itself, but we'll have to see in the next song. This is a bonus track, kind of hard to rate, but after hearing it, I can see why they left it out of the original release. I don't think it's bad by any means, but I don't think it really does anything. I would give this one probably like a D+. Alright, so here's another one I feel like someone else will appreciate more than I do. This song is basically a combination of Repetition of Hatred and Rotting Root from the last album. I like the second half of the song, but the first part just really feels really drawn out to me. The one saving grace in this song for me is the drum part. It's quite insane. But other than that, I remember skipping this one all of the time. And that's because I think the first part is just really drawn out. I also think this one tries to do too much, and because of that, it becomes pretty hard to listen to, as the song will shift drastically without a lot of build. There's still something you can get out of listening to it, but it's really not one of my favorite ones to listen to. I can see why this one has its fans, because it's really not a bad song. Like, I don't think it's terrible, but I don't think it's good for me either. I think I'm just gonna give this one a solid C. This is another one I'm not too crazy about. I actually really like the intro a lot, as the smooth synthesizer comes out to kind of give the song a pretty nice unique sound. And it actually gives the song an identity, which is something that they would do on Withering to Death. But then, after the intro, the synthesizer goes away and never returns. So it kind of loses the identity quite afterwards. Drums and vocals are pretty good in this one. Lyrics are a little confusing, but that kind of comes with the territory of this lyric writer. I do think it's an easier listen than Bugaboo, and the chorus is pretty nice to hear. I think it's okay, but I don't think it's like anything great. Overall, I give it a B-. Alright, their other radio song that you just couldn't find on the radio. And Dawson Green really does a good job of being that. The song is pretty easy to listen to, and it has a version that's completely in English. It's a really solid song. The guitars steal the show in this one, as they will play some really cool counter melodies towards the end that harmonize really well. Drum part is pretty solid as well. Vocals really shine here, and the lyrics are really great. With this one and Glass Skin, I actually prefer the English versions melodically, as the rhythms slightly change in some places, and the English kind of gives it more of a rhythmic feel. I know it's really hard to understand what he's saying in English, but somehow for me it just sounds better. I don't know why. But still, overall, I think all of that is pretty unique. He sings it in a really, really unique manner. Overall, I think the song is a strong A+. I'm going to give it A+ because of the scream at the end. This one is a really, really good song. Alright. This one kind of gives me an alternative rock feel. A little bit, like a very tiny bit. The first half of this song is actually quite light and even has kind of that lunacy style. It's there, barely there somehow. It's just barely there. And it was actually quite refreshing compared to the other songs on the album. Though this song gets heavier towards the end, it kind of doesn't need to. Like, I feel like the scream didn't have to be there. And the scream sounds actually kind of weak, like it's the 5th take or something. Like, it's not the first take, or his voice is kind of tired. Other than that, I really like the metal motifs in this song, as they make it sound more epic. There's this epicness to this song. According to the Duran Gray Wiki, the working title for this one was Day of Judgment, which I feel like fits the sound better than the title that they actually went with. With its epic sound, it makes it sound like a really good closing song. So this one is really well placed on the album. I give this one a solid A. Alright, so some editions of Uroboros came with some extra tracks. Mostly nothing to say, since it's just like the Japanese version of Glass Skin and the Japanese version of Dolls in Green. But there's another version of Dolls in Green called Before the Construction. So it's like a rough draft of sorts. So it's like kind of like a rough mix. And my god, I so much prefer it to the Dolls in Green that they actually went with. If you missed Duran Gray's alternative rock sound, it is right here in this version of Dolls in Green. Even though it's a hard mix, I really like this version of Dolls in Green, and it's kind of just like hidden away here. And it actually leads me to believe that maybe Dai had something to do with the composition of that song. So yeah, if you can find that version of Dolls in Green before the construction, I would definitely give it a listen to, especially if you missed Duran Gray's old style. Sounds like they're still able to compose in that way, and then they just kind of make everything metal. But I really like that alternative rock sound, so really give that one a listen. So what was it about this album that made me stop listening to Duran Gray? I think around this time, especially like in 2011, I was starting to develop myself as a musician and a composer. And I was just graduating high school, so I was starting to like really get into the music stuff. I started focusing on artists that I could emulate better and that fit my style of music and my personality more. As much as I love Duran Gray, I did not feel like their new direction and sound-wise was the way I wanted to go in my own music, nor did I think it fit me as a person. Like, I really don't really make metal music. Like, if you listen to Phoenix Splash's newest song on this channel, it sounds nothing like anything Duran Gray would make. And I do not expect Duran Gray fans from watching these videos to become fans of Phoenix Splash, especially this late in the review, because the music is just so different. And I think that's why I kind of sadly drifted apart from Duran Gray. You know, they were going in a direction that was very different from a direction I was going. Even with that said though, I still like to think some Duran Gray rubbed off on me. The way I play drums and the way I compose instruments and counter melodies likely has some of their influence in there. And of course, my bass guitar composing, whenever I compose bass guitar, I always have melody in mind. And I always have the legendary bass part of Cage in mind, when I'm writing bass. But it's the Duran Gray of the older era that kind of fits with my personality more so than the Duran Gray of this era. But we are not done yet. Now we transverse into the unknown. Is that the right? Traverse. Now we traverse into the unknown. Is there something in this new era of Duran Gray that I can take with me? Let us find out. Alright, up next we have Dum Spiro Spero. There's a lot of schools of thought on how to pronounce this phrase, but I'm going by the one I found online. So if I'm pronouncing it wrong, I am sorry. I tried my best. For some reason, there's not a lot on personnel with this album. I'm not sure why. I'm guessing Duran Gray is very hands-off when it comes to like outside help. So maybe they did this one all on their own, or Dynamite Tommy's here. Either way, it's kind of hard, you know. Maybe it was like Marrow the Bone and it's hard to read the personnel credits. So we're just going to kind of brush aside personnel for this one, and we're just going to get on to with the review. Alright, so we have Cries of Madness. This is an intro song and a pretty good one. The tone is extremely dark and you hear all of these horrific sounds in there that are mixed with Kyo's screaming and vocals. I think as an intro it works pretty well and allows the listener to get a good idea of what's to come. I like it more than Sabir for sure, so this one gets a solid B. Alright, the Blossoming Beelzebub. Okay, so this one is a tough one to rate because I like it and I don't like it at the same time. It's one of those. I'm sure everyone has songs like that. I like the atmosphere it makes with its sound, for one, and I like the lyrics. I think it tells a pretty unique description. But the song drags on a bit too much for me. And with a 7-minute song, that's something you don't want to happen. Comparing this one to the 9-minute track of their last album, I think Venushka works way better as a loud opener. This one kind of takes the energy away, and I can imagine a ton of listeners hitting the skip button on this one probably around the 4-minute mark. But if you manage to survive around the 6-minute mark, the song changes in a really, really cool way, becomes more melodic, and the instrumentation changes as well. Pretty cool. So yeah, there's a lot to this song, and maybe this is another one that people will appreciate more than me. But I still think it's really good once you get past the dragging part. I give this one a B-. Okay, this next one is a really good song, as we have the return of a guitar solo. That's right, we haven't seen a guitar solo in like 2 albums, maybe even more, 3, 4. Is it 4? But this one is a really good guitar solo, and it's harmonized too, and it's probably one of their best guitar solos they've ever done. Where was this? Believe it or not, this song I feel like mixes their heavy style with their ballad style. You get these really heavy and screaming verses, followed by a melodic chorus that would be found in like their atmospheric ballad-like songs. And it actually blends very well. Bass guitar is well written here and the drum part is insane. I say that a lot lately about his drum parts. It almost feels like the song is falling apart and someone is like running around trying to put it all back together. It's a really cool effect. Kyo's screaming and singing is top tier on this one. This is a really good performance by him. And yeah, overall really good song. The guitar solo in this one just puts this one over the edge. I give this one the gold. Well placed, unexpected, and very emotional. Very good song. Alright, up next we have Amon. This one is pretty good too. I'm really liking the melodic guitars in this one. And the last one also had this as well. And I hope to hear more of this really melodic style in the future of this album. This one has a really good feel and it's very energetic, but I feel like there's some moments of pause in the vocals that kind of go on a bit long. And nothing really takes over the melody. It's kind of odd. And this happens at like different parts of the song as well. Usually when stuff like this happens, I turn to the lyrics to see if it makes any sense, but I just couldn't make sense of it. Almost sounds like something is missing, like another instrument wasn't recorded or something. But I'm sure that's not the case. I'm sure like maybe there's just some reason I just can't figure out. Regardless though, I think this one is a decent song, but I don't think it's like that great song. I give this one a solid B. Alright, up next we have Dreambox in a Covetousness, or the idea of maturity and cold rain. This is a really weird title because it has the word or in it, so I was like, which one is it? With this song, I can see why fans of this album and onward probably, some of them like really hate Duran Gray's old stuff, like Gaull's Vulgar and, you know, their other old stuff. It's just so vastly different. And I like the song title of this one, and the lyrics are really good too. This is a vocal showcase and likely might be the most difficult sounding performance vocally. I like the disturbing nature of this one, and the song just sounds, pardon my French, but the song sounds fucked up. Like, it just sounds fucked up. I don't know, it's just something about it. It's just like really creepy. If you were to show this song to somebody, they would say, man, you must be like twisted. You must be twisted or something. At the same time, it's childish as well. Kyo even like, there's this part, I don't know if it's a pitch shift or different singers, but there's like this backing vocal that sounds like someone's laughing, and these weird chords and harmonies appear under it. And that's like the scariest thing I ever heard in a song, like ever. I was going to give the song an A+, but I think that creepy laughing section kind of puts this one over the edge. Kind of puts this one in the gold. So yeah, this one's going to get the gold. I think this one is a must listen to, and I dare you to fall asleep to this song. Alright, Carnal Desire. This one is quite interesting. It almost seems like Kyo is experimenting with some of the India styles of singing. And it actually sounds maybe even a little Native American as well. It's trying to speak to me. This one suffers a little bit of the same criticism that I had with Beelzebub, as there's parts that kind of just drag on a bit. And like Beelzebub, again, once you get past the parts that are dragging, the song drastically climaxes into something really great. It's almost like rewarding your patience. This climax here, though, I felt could have been a little longer. You get these really cool arpeggios in the guitar, and the song builds and builds, and then it just stops. Again, I still think it's a good song, but I don't think it's like a great song. I'm going to give this one a B-. Alright, this next one, this one's pretty much middle of the road for me, and listening to this one has me thinking like, yeah, this is that metal sound that they're going for. And I guess what kind of gets me in the song is, other than the uniqueness from Kyo, is that there really isn't anything identifiable or stand outish about this song. And, you know, maybe that's what they're going for with this one, because look at the title. It's like, the title's like, it's obscure or something. It's like they're having an identity crisis. But yeah, I listened to this one like about 3 times, and you know, I took a break to do something else, and I came back to it just to try to find things to say, and I just really couldn't. One thing I did note was that the ending is pretty interesting, but other than that, I feel like I'll forget about this one in like a week or two. It's not a useless song, it's just kind of the middle of the road. I give it a solid C. Alright, now this one is more like it. The song has a melodic bass line, and it's rare, but sometimes, even on the newer stuff, we'll get a glimpse of what our lovely bass player can do when there's more room in the music for bass melody. Really amazing drum part as well, tons of syncopation, and they line up with the bass guitar part really well. Shinya and Toshiya are a well-oiled machine on this one. It's just really good synchronization. This one is probably the easiest to listen to so far, and maybe even close to alternative rock sounding, just a little bit. And for some reason, I kind of hear a glimpse of their old style within this song. So if you're a fan of their old stuff, you might like Lotus. It's kind of like their old style with metal motifs. All around, this one is a really good one. I give this one an A+. Alright, so we have another long 9-minute song, so I'll be comparing it to other songs of that magnitude, that longer length. Kind of like Lotus, there's a glimpse of alternative rock sections in the beginning, and there's even a part where the guitar actually has the melody, and it's practically a guitar solo. Is that Dai? Are you in there? In my opinion though, I think Venushka has a bit more to offer as it's more identifiable with its instrumentation, like its flute. This one does have an extra instrument, but that's where it gets a little weird for me. Towards the end, there's a MIDI piano that just sounds very MIDI. Like they had a MIDI piano and they just put a bunch of reverb on it. And I'm not sure why they did that. I looked at the lyrics to see if I'm missing something, but no, it's almost like it was like a temporary part and they just kind of like just kept it in and just put reverb on it, and you know, it kind of sounds like a real piano. But other than that, I think the song is pretty solid. It's pretty good. Bass guitar part and guitar parts are really well done. Those are the parts that stood out to me the most. But yeah, it's good, but not as good as Venushka. I give this one a solid A. Alright, so now we have Dawn. This one is pretty good. Again, we're hearing some really good bass guitar on these past few songs, and on this one too. And I like how Shinya does this 16th note pattern on the drums to give the song a little bit more anticipation. It's actually really clever. And there's a guitar solo on this one. It was mostly like a noisy guitar solo, but you know, I'll take it. This one is another good solid song, very high energy. Kyo's melody, I think, takes some getting used to in this one. It's not very quote-unquote catchy, so you know, you kind of have to get used to it. I like it, and I like how the guitar will share notes with Kyo's melody. But yeah, overall, it's a good song. I give this one a B+. Alright, Decayed Crow. Okay, it's time to get some more dislikes right now because I don't really like this song. For anyone who really likes this song, you know, keep liking it. Jam out to it, go to town. You know, you're allowed to like this one. You're allowed to have a different opinion than me. But whenever I hear the song, it actually kind of reminds me of Zan. But with everything that made Zan unique taken out. And I get that Kyo is a great screamer and singer, and his skill alone makes it unique when you compare it to other bands. But within the confines of the other songs on this album and the other songs in their library so far, this one just doesn't click for me. I'm not giving it an F though. I only give Fs to songs that are pointless or songs that I actually hate. This one I do not hate. I think all of the members of the band play the song very well. No one is struggling with their parts. They're professionals. They're doing a good job at their parts. This D is mostly in tastes, mostly personal taste for me. And I'll add a plus because there's some cool guitar playing at the very end that I actually like. But again, you have to get past the rest of the song. So yeah, this one gets a D plus and probably gets me a dislike on this video. But that's just my personal opinion on this song. So yeah, Decayed Crow gets a D plus. Alright, this one is really good. I like how they actually reharmonize the chorus in some parts. It's really fascinating. Drum part sounds really, really intimidating to play, and I like the distinction between the heavy parts and the lighter parts. Whenever they go light, everything just sounds so much freer, and they exploit that very well here as they're not bogged down. If you know a metal fan and you're trying to get them into Duran Gray, I think this one is a good showcase. It's pretty easy to listen to, has a lot in there. It's not super crazy, but I think is a pretty good solid song. I give this one an A. Alright, Emptiness. Now we have the album's quote-unquote ballad, and I say that with quotes because I remember hearing that Duran Gray does not want their ballad songs to be considered ballad songs, as they're not exactly the lightest songs around, but in contrast to the rest of the album, they feel more like ballads. I think with this one, they were making it a point to go heavier, and what you get is this kind of alternative rock sounding song. You kind of get an alternative rock sounding songs because they're trying to make it soft but not too soft, but not too heavy, and alternative rock is my jam. Really, really cool guitar solo in this one. Also makes it more alt-rock sounding. Need I say the guitar solo is very X-Japan-like, as it'll start slow, then progressively use faster rhythms towards the end, and then kind of mellow out. Really good bass line in this one. I feel like Toshi has been killing it on this album. He's really figured out how to showcase his skills. And I really like the intro and overall vibe to this one, as it reminds me of 90s Japan. I even got Shenmue vibes from the chord choices they used. This one is a very different sounding Duran Gray songs, especially compared to the other songs on this album, and even compared to everything else in their library. And this one might be my favorite ballad because you just gotta listen to it. This one might be underrated. I could be wrong, but I don't see too many people talking about this one. I guess if you're strictly a metal fan, which I feel like by now maybe most of their audience are, maybe they won't appreciate this one as much as I appreciate it. Or, maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, I think this one gets the gold. Alright, final song. This one is a really good song. Love the intro and the epicness that it starts with. The vocal melody and the vocal gasps in the song are just incredible. And I remember someone I was learning singing from always mentioned that the listener shouldn't ever hear your breath before you sing in a recording. Well, in this song, they mute all other instruments so that you can hear that big breath from Kyo before he starts singing the choruses. And I was like, man, that's a big FU. Big FU to those singing nuts. I like the pauses within this song and the abrupt slowdowns in here as well. Great guitar work here. And we have these really dark melodies that contrast with Kyo's really slow singing melody. Shinya kills it on this one too. Great drum work. I like the backing vocals on this one part. Sounds like something in a Disney movie where like the background characters will laugh as they sing. It's that laughing background track, that laughing background singing that was kind of in Dreambox. It's kind of done here as well. If this were a Disney movie though, it'd be pretty screwed up if this song was in there. For me, this one gets the gold. It's probably my favorite easy listening to Duran Gray song, because I think it's there. I think it could be like a radio song. All right, so yeah, this one gets the gold. Alright, time for some bonus tracks. So the limited edition version of this album came with an additional disc that contained some remixes and different versions of songs. And I'm going to lump all of these together as I don't really score different versions of the same songs. You know, these are kind of just them adding stuff and, you know, redoing old stuff. We have a re-recording of Rakshasha Country. This is a song all the way back from Macabre. Oddly enough, surprised they cover Macabre so much. That was not one of my favorite songs from that album, but they brought it back and improved it in my opinion, much like they did with Hydra. Except with this one, it's more attuned to the original version. Then we have Amon, the symphony version. And the symphony version is way better than the one they put on the actual album. I think my main critique with Amon was that it just sounded like things were missing on certain parts. Well, it turned out that the missing stuff was an orchestra. Yeah, it just fit really well because you have like all these other melodies filling in all those like gaps of non-melody. It's really, really cool. So yeah, if you have a playlist and, you know, just discard the vanilla Amon and replace it with the orchestral version and it's bittersweet. There's an acoustic Tower of I really can't pronounce that word. Tower of Vicissitudes. It's just like a piano. Yeah, that one like really didn't do it for me. It honestly sounded like they just gave the vocal track to a pianist and told him to come up with something. It has its moments, but the beginning of it just really seems off. So yeah, that one's kind of weird for me. Then we have the demo versions of certain songs, not really much to say there. And then finally the remixes. If you're into electronic music and ambient weirdness, then these will be up your alley. Usually artists will give their songs to someone who will like make a remix for some extra content. But Duran Gray, being the workaholics they are, they actually remix the songs themselves. And they actually get like individual credits for what they remixed. Out of all of them, I thought Dreambox remix was the best. So if it's a competition, Toshio wins the remix competition. Overall, neat little extra stuff to add on to the album. Pretty cool. Alright, so this is the new phase of Duran Gray, and I think it's pretty good. We had some gold on the album. 4 gold, I believe, to be exact. So it seems Duran Gray and I still mesh pretty well as far as me as a listener. Also, compared to Uroboros, they seem more free on this album, especially towards the end. Granted, I haven't heard this one as much as I have heard the others, so it's kind of rated a little bit from a different perspective. In fact, all of the songs I heard on this album, I'm pretty much hearing for the first time. So honestly, it turned out way better than I thought it would. Alright, so that was part 4 of Duran Gray All Songs Reviewed. The journey forward is quite interesting as we have an EP called The Unraveling, which looks to mostly contain remakes of songs that they have done in their past. After that is Arch and The Insulated World, which is their most recent albums. After we finish the albums, we go back in time and go over some singles and see if there's any songs we missed in that era. So if there were songs that were only released as singles, we'll get to it at the very end. So there's still quite a bit of music to get to, but I think we can get it done in probably 2 more parts. And if the last part ends up pretty small, you know, maybe I'll throw in some bonus content. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for those who've made it this far. And if you haven't checked out some of the earlier parts of this series, go ahead and check them out. Even if you're not a fan of the old Duran Gray, maybe there's something in there that might interest you. Anyways, this is Josh from Phoenix Splash, signing off.